Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates, a podcast where we explore what is possible in the world of investing. If you've just joined us for the very first time, a huge welcome to our community. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you going?
I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this episode. Very excited for this series that we're bringing out over the next few weeks. This is episode 1 of a 6-part series, Real Talk,
Yes.
We're calling it. We're lifting the lid on Equity Mates and on, I guess, ourselves. We're talking about how we invest, how we would get started if you were investing today. We're also going to talk about the inside story of Equity Mates. So we're excited to get into this series. The context is, it's been a big first half of the year.
Massive.
You and I are going to take a little bit of time off, just a couple of weeks, to reset, recharge before we run home hard in the back end of the year. And we thought it would be a good time to just reflect on everything we've learned about investing over the last 8 years, I guess.
Big time. So we're pumped. And as we said, this series is called Real Talk because life throws many moments at you, some major triumphs, some awkward mishaps, some real lows. And in this Real Talk series, brought to you by Guzman y Gomez, we are going deep on some of those highs and lows. So in this series, we're going to be covering how we'd get started, investing at any age, our portfolios today, the story behind Equity Mates, best and worst finance advice we've ever heard, and then closing out with personal finance habits that have changed our lives.
So wherever you are on your investing journey, hopefully this is a chance to reset, to remind ourselves of some of the basics of investing, some of those fundamental principles that will hold you in good stead over the long term, and also a bit of a reminder of how we got here today. So as you said, Bryce, episode 1, we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to start with how we got started investing all those years ago, but also how we would get started today. If we had our time again, with everything we've learned over the journey, what we would actually do to get started. And you mentioned this series is brought to you by Guzman y Gomez.
Yes.
They currently have a campaign promoting their burritos. The tagline is, keep it real, eat a burrito. And so over this series, we're going to be trying to keep it real. Unfortunately, we don't have burritos to eat in
No, we're going to get very hungry during this episode.
But hopefully as we get real and unpack the real story behind Equity Mates and give you some real investing insights, you can keep it real and eat a burrito.
Love it. Well, let's get stuck in right from the top, how we got started. Now, I know that our story has been told many a time, but for those just joining us, we are going to take it right back to the very first instance where we made our first investment. So shall I kick off, Ren?
Yeah, let's do it.
So my story started back in kindergarten, actually, when my parents sat me down with $1.50 split into 50-cent coins, and they tried to teach me, I guess, the value of money, but also the value of investing. And they told me, you're going to need to split this $1.50 into 3 buckets: spending, saving, and investing. And they said, you're going to save that 50 cents. It was a fortnightly pocket money. Save that 50 cents until you can buy your first parcel of shares. Now, back in the day, actually, it still exists today. The minimum parcel size on the ASX was $500. So, Ren, you can imagine trying to save 50 cents a fortnight took a long time to get to $500. But nonetheless, finally, 2003 was when I got that $500 and was able to make my first investment.
I reckon your parents supplemented your 50 cents. I'm trying to do the maths on 50 cents a fortnight and how long that would take.
Yeah, so I think I started with I think there was an initial $2 deposit.
Okay,
so I've still got the stubs at home from the Dolomite ComSec book that you would take to school. But you're right. I think birthdays and a few things here and there, definitely there were some bumps along the way.
Well, I mean, 50 cents to get into $1,000 to $500, you needed 1,000 pay cycles. And if you were getting paid fortnightly, that's 2,000 weeks. So what, 2,000 into 50 weeks a year, that's 40 years.
40 years, yeah, no. Is it 2,000?
Well, I mean, 50 cents into 500 is 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah?
So 1,000.
But then you're paid fortnightly, so 2,000 weeks.
Definitely didn't take 40 years. There was. I think
we start to unpick the Bryce Lesky origin story.
I was selling rocks in year 4 and selling water to the guy across the road who was mowing the lawn. So I got there.
Yeah, you got there. Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, what did we buy? So obviously I was too young at the time to have my own brokerage account, and I really didn't understand investing at all. And so Dad, he bought me into the IPO for Brickworks Investment Company. So this is not Brickworks, the brick company, but it is Brickworks, the investment company, BKI. It was a listed investment company. And at the time, that was like the equivalent of the ETF, the modern day ETF, a listed investment company. So Dad was trying to teach me about diversification, about just putting money in consistently over the long term, told me I didn't need to invest in anything else, and that the LIC was the way to go. So that was 2003. We're doing real talk. We're looking back over time. So I had a look at actually how it's performed.
Okay.
So IPO'd in 2003. What are we, 22 years later? Yeah. It's up 81%.
Yeah, I did see that. It's gone from $1 to $1.80.
Oh my God. So not massive capital growth, but it has pumped out 10% total return per annum for the last 23 years because it's a big dividend payer.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why a lot of the retirees like this type of stuff. But for me, I got to a point when I was early university where the capital growth was just not exciting enough, and I'd sold out of it. So that was my first story.
Nice.
And yeah, don't own it, but it still exists. And I look back on that as thanks to Dad for really inspiring the start of my investing journey.
Nice.
So again, just looking back on that time, a few other, I guess, notable things. I didn't have a broker. When Dad transferred me the stock from his account, which was ANZ, to CommSec, I remember this so clearly. You had to pay a $100 transfer fee.
No way.
Yeah.
$100 transfer fee.
$100 transfer fee, yeah. So obviously I was with CommSec because we had the Dolomites, and I was spewing that I had to pay the $100 because...
Oh, your dad didn't cover it for you?
No way! No way. He did not. No way. But then I look at the early days when I really started to get seriously interested in investing, and the story was one of trying to be a stock picker. And I really kind of look back on this moment because for years, my parents had been just encouraging me, stick to the LIC, stick to the diversification, and just keep putting your money in and building it. And I think we'll talk a little bit about later on about why that message still stands true. But I look back on our university days and, you know, the money wasted, but the lessons learned in trying to pick individual stocks, I think was a real pivotal moment. I think we both thought we were trying to be the Warren Buffett.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I've actually just had a look while you were telling that story. It looks like CommSec no longer charge a fee. Good. Yeah. If you're transferring yourself to yourself on a CHESS sponsored account, there's no fee.
Good.
So there we go. Things have changed.
Fees galore back in the day.
Yeah. So for me, I think you finished that story there by saying we were trying to be the next Warren Buffett. And I think really for me, that's where my story starts. So for people who haven't heard it before, I didn't learn about investing growing up, didn't learn about it from my parents, didn't learn about it in school, that classic Australian story of save for a home deposit, pay off your mortgage, and that's sort of the beginning and the end of the wealth building story. Met you at uni. You obviously were interested in investing, but it was really only after we left college and then we were living together that we actually started talking about business and investing. And I guess we picked up the AFR. I don't really know what was the spark.
Yeah, the catalyst.
Yeah. I think it was business into investing.
Yeah. Was it the share market game?
No, I don't think so. I think for me, I also didn't mind a punt.
Yeah.
And then I think I realized as I learned more about investing, it was like, oh, this is a more sensible way where you can use your knowledge to make a return. Unfortunately, that didn't really play out in my first investment. we were reading about Slater and Gordon. The law firm still exists, but no longer listed, who was absolutely flying on the share market. So they were getting a lot of coverage in the AFR. And I jumped on that train thinking that I knew what I was doing. It went over to the UK. It bought this like professional services firm over there, which just turned out to be like an absolute disaster. And then they were also Slater and Gordon, their accounting practices. So they were they still are a no-win, no-fee law firm.
Yep.
And so they have a whole bunch of work in progress, which you're not sure if they're going to actually earn any revenue from.
Yeah.
But they were booking that all as revenue. So anyway, like the UK acquisition was terrible, accounting scandal, share price absolutely plummeted. But I had internalized this idea that like, we've been reading the Warren Buffett books and all of that stuff.
Buy more.
And it was like, be greedy when others are fearful.
Yeah.
And so as it was falling, I remember, so at that time, we were just working part-time uni jobs. I was working at a furniture warehouse, building furniture and delivering it to offices around Canberra. And I remember seeing it on my phone and buying more, or just watching it go down and being like, I'm going to buy more. Anyway, bought more, lost so much money, lost the original $1,000 invested and whatever else I put into it on its way down, that I was left with $12. And the brokerage on CommSec at the time was $19.95. So I had so little left that I couldn't even cover the brokerage to sell it.
Wow.
So for people out there wondering about getting started investing, you're not going to have a worse first investment than I did.
No, keep it real.
Keep it real, eat a burrito. But the good news is I stuck with it. And the next investment, which I'm not sure I had any more knowledge at that point, but it was A2 Milk.
Yes.
And for people who remember the A2 Milk story at that time, it was a rocket ship.
Yeah.
So I bought A2 Milk at 60 cents.
Yeah.
Rode it to $12.
Yeah.
Sold there, so 20x'd my money. It still kept running. It got close to $20, but it's come off and I think it's about $7 now.
I mean, what a journey to go from 99% down to 20 times.
I know. Yeah.
I still remember when we were living together, Canberra, freezing. I think we'd gone and done the group boys shop and you were pointing out A2 Milk in the store and you were like just super bullish on it, trying to explain to the guys why it's going to, the China story. It
was all the China story. It was that and Bellamy's. We all got on Bellamy's. That wasn't as big, but it still was good. And then I remember, so then we got jobs. You were at Woolies, I was at Coles. And I remember all the time at Coles, whenever I would work in stores, I would always say my sell signal for A2 Milk is when we could keep the infant formula on the shelves.
Yeah.
Because at that time,
crazy, wasn't it?
It was this Daigou channel where local Chinese buyers would buy it from the supermarkets and then send it over to China. And the demand for infant formula was so high from China because their domestically produced infant formula had all these like health issues and problems. And so there was a real demand for clean, high quality infant formula. Coles got to the point, and I'm sure Woolies was the same, where they couldn't keep the infant formula on the shelf because it would just get either stolen or people would buy it so quickly that they had to put it behind the service desk where you buy your cigarettes.
No, not true.
And it was like a limit of 1 per customer or 2 per customer.
Yeah. I remember before it got to the limits that we wouldn't even bother putting it on the shelf. We'd just roll the pallet out.
Oh, and just drop it.
Because it'd just be
go.
Boom.
Yeah,
There'd be lines at the door.
Yeah, it was
They'd
nuts.
just fill their bags.
And so I was always like, for me, like I can do all the investment research in the world, but this was the clear, as long as we can't keep it on the shelf,
keep holding.
Keep holding.
Yeah.
So that was a really good, obviously a really good investment for me, but a really good lesson for me early days because I quickly realized there's an asymmetric upside in investing. So you can only lose 100%, and I lost basically 100% with Slater and Gordon, but you can make a lot more with that. And I think, as we've learned over time, especially if you're in it for the long game, you can make a lot more than that.
Definitely. So that's the journey of how we got started. Plenty of reflections for us though, Ren. I think we've been in the game now seriously for probably 10 years?
Well, we've been doing the podcast for 8 years.
Yeah, 8 years. Yeah. So I guess there's been some moments that I look back on that worth reflecting on. The first being the Afterpay investment as well. And I think that was my true first sort of similar situation to you, which is like, wow, I've truly understood that like you can get seriously wealthy in the stock market. Anybody can do well in the stock market. Like you don't have to grind away at work and work for the man for your whole life.
Yeah, well, like, yeah.
Anyone can make good money from the stock market. Yeah.
For people who don't remember the Afterpay story, it was another rocket ship that just went up right before COVID, and then during COVID, it was just nuts. Bryce was still working at Woolies at that time, and people who worked at Woolies still talk about Bryce spruiking Afterpay in the early days. And I think you probably paid off a few mortgages in Norwest.
People did very well from it, that's for sure. Yeah. So we picked it at around $250. I think my average price was about $12 and then wrote it up to, $156 or thereabouts when it got bought by Square. On the flip side, though, I took many a stock picks, and I think early days I was sort of wooed a little bit by a lot of the experts that we spoke to, and my worst performing over the period has been Satire. Lost about 86%, got wooed by an expert. And I think I look back on the early days, the amount of stock picks I would take just through people talking about them and doing no DD. And a big regret, I actually sold a fair chunk of my Bitcoin to fund part of my wedding. So I've bought back in, but I look back on what I'd originally bought Bitcoin at and wonder, was the wedding worth selling?
Oh, wow. Hopefully Ham's not listening to this. You should have done a Bitcoin wishing well at your wedding.
That would have been a great idea. That would have been a great idea.
Would have been easy as well. People could have just scanned a QR code. And,
True. Damn it. What about you? Any sort of reflections or pivotal moments that you look back on?
Oh, I think looking back at our early days, and particularly my early days, I think obviously my understanding wasn't there. Like I put all my money in one individual stock and lost it all. So like that's obvious. But I think understanding the choices that we had out there, there was just a lack of understanding of the choices, I think is probably how I'd say it. So I remember early days of doing the podcast, we were still trying to figure out the difference between ETFs and LICs.
Yeah.
Like ETFs were nascent in Australia. They weren't like as big and front of mind as they are now, but still they existed, and we were doing an investing podcast and we were trying to learn about this space, and that would have been a much better option than Slater and Gordon. But also there was no understanding of like buying the index and just that would be enough. And that really has only been like a slow dawning realization over the years of doing this podcast. And so, I think all of the preconceived notions we have about the stock market today, how you need to be and act and how much work you need to do and what you need to buy to make money, like we embodied all of that. We thought you had to like find unknown individual stocks that were going to get massive very quickly. And what we've learned subsequently is like all of those preconceived notions aren't really the best way to invest.
No.
The best way to invest is consistently over a long period of time buying like index tracking ETFs or something similar that gives you broad exposure to the market, and then just letting the market do its thing over time. That's probably a good segue to take a break and then talk about how we would invest today, because if how we started investing how I started investing isn't what we would do today. I mean, your story was pretty good, getting started when you were bloody 6 years old or something. I think we've learned a lot, and I think we have a bit of a playbook that we think anyone can follow, regardless of how much money you make, how much you've got in your bank account, to get started today.
Yeah. So before we get into it, Ren, we want to say a massive thank you to Guzman y Gomez for supporting this Real Talk series, helping us keep it real and eat a burrito.
Now, as part of this campaign, Guzman have given us a look at some of their stats.
Yes.
We've gone behind the scenes and got some information. So in each of these ad breaks, I'm going to ask you a question, Bryce. See how well you know burritos.
Okay.
So have you tried their brekkie burrito?
Absolutely.
Yeah, pretty good. Underrated, I think. Which state loves brekkie burritos the most? As a percentage of total spending.
Like total burritos bought.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. I'm going to go with Queensland.
Queensland, you would not be correct. Queensland, a second. 24% of burritos are brekkie burritos, but it's actually the Northern Territory.
Oh, wow.
Where 29% of burritos are brekkie burritos. New South Wales, where we live, half of that, 14%.
Wow.
So we've got some brekkie burritos to eat.
Well, as you said, highly underrated, I think, the brekkie burrito. If you're looking for a burrito, make sure you go out and check out the Guzman y Gomez brekkie burrito.
And if you haven't yet, download the GYG app and you can score a free burrito when you sign up to their rewards program, GoMex.
Yeah.
You can skip the queue and even get it delivered through the GYG app. Keep it real, eat a burrito.
All right, let's get back into it. So, Ren, there are plenty of things that we would do differently, as you teased before the break, if we were to start again today. And I think this episode is for everyone. Well, if you have just started, this is going to be a good sort of check to sort of think about, can I do it a different way? But if you haven't, this is going to really help you really think about how to get started.
Yeah, so I think before the break, we spoke about some of the things that we wouldn't do. I think we wouldn't invest in an individual stock to get started. We wouldn't try and chase a quick win. We certainly wouldn't invest in a company that we hadn't done the research on. What else wouldn't we do?
What wouldn't we do? I wouldn't get flustered about what broker to use and spend ages and ages and ages trying to figure it out.
Yep.
I wouldn't worry about having to need $1,000 or so to get started.
Yep.
And I wouldn't labor on trying to pick the perfect investment to get started.
Okay, nice. One more I think that people often trip up on is I wouldn't wait for the perfect time to start investing. I think this year has been a real lesson in people who try and time the market often have worse results. A lot of people who thought they could pick the market and time the market were selling out as Liberation Day, as those tariffs were introduced, and people thought, this is going to lead to a fall in the stock market. All of a sudden, the stock market rips. It recovers. It hits all-time highs, and those people were left outside looking in.
Yeah.
So, what would we do?
I would be going straight for index ETFs.
Yes, we are the index boys, so unsurprising.
Yeah, we love indexes. Indexes are a way to measure change over time. And indexes in the investing sense is a way that we measure the total return of a large number of stocks. And so here in Australia, the ASX 200 index is the top 200 stocks in Australia. That index, we use it to measure how those 200 stocks perform over a period of time. You can invest in those indexes through ETFs, exchange traded funds.
How we do it, the majority of our investments go into these index ETFs. You and I each have 4 ETFs that make up our core portfolio. But the good news is that's even one step more advanced than it needs to be. If we were getting started today, if we were back in that share house in Canberra trying to figure out the AFR and get it started, you can buy an all-in-one ETF that tracks basically either the global stock market as an index, or it tracks like multiple different countries' indexes. So Australia's ASX 200, America's S&P 500, and they do all the work to roll that into one ETF for you. If you're in Australia, there's 3 tickers that we would suggest, and then Bryce has a 4th that has a bit of an extra kick to it. So beta shares have DHHF, and then Vanguard have VDHG or VDAL.
Yep.
So you can just Google any of those tickers and do some research on them. If you want a bit of a spicier version, there's a bit of leverage in GHHF from beta shares. So that's another one to look at. But why we like these is they give you access to tens of thousands of stocks all around the world in one simple trade. And you can invest in these, depending on the platform you're using, from $1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's super accessible.
And they're not going to be like the Afterpay or the A2 Milk that we spoke about earlier. They're not going to 10 times your money in a year. But the long-term average of the stock market, depending on the market, sort of moves between 8 and 13% a year. And if you consistently get that, let's say you consistently get 10% a year for 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to have more than you will need to live a comfortable life, have a comfortable retirement. Might not be more than you want. Might not be Lambo money, might not be Jeff Bezos boat money, but more than you need.
Absolutely. I look back and think about this and think that if all I'd done is put, whatever I could do during university, and let's acknowledge that during university, you're not going to have huge amounts of free cash flow to be investing, but whatever I could do, and then when I got my first job at Woolworths and had a bit more free cash flow, regularly start putting in, if all I'd focused on was putting money in these all-in-one ETFs or the core ETF that I have now for sort of 10 years, and then thought about buying individual stocks and stuff from there, that foundation that you would have built in that core portfolio, man, you'll look back on that in 40 years and pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, and it's not just about the financial return as well. It's you would have got such an understanding of how the market works and your own temperament, and you would have started to understand that when the market falls, you shouldn't be panicking because things recover. You would have got a sense that it's not good for your own temperament to be checking your brokerage account every day, and you would have just started building those really good long-term investing habits that would hold you in good stead as, you start earning more money and you can put more to investing, and then you can spend a bit more time thinking about individual stocks or other opportunities. But just getting that foundation, both of the portfolio foundation set with something that gives you like low-cost, diversified access to the world, but also the foundations of good investing habits.
Yeah.
So then the final step is about automating this initial setup that you've got. And our book, Don't Stress, Just Invest, really went through these 4 steps about how you can automate your core portfolio. The important thing to stress these days is that the brokerage accounts that you can use to invest, a lot of them offer like an automatic investment feature where you say every X number of days, I'm going to have an automatic bank transfer from my bank account into my investment account. And then I'm going to set up an automatic instruction with my investment account to just buy whatever each fortnight, each week, however often you're doing it. So, we get paid fortnightly here on a Monday. On a Tuesday, I have an automatic bank transfer to my investment account. And on a Wednesday, I have an instruction there to just buy these index ETFs.
Yeah.
And so it just takes all the thinking out of it. It allows you to just set and forget, get on with your life, do more interesting things, and know that your investments are ticking away in the background. And that automation, we think, is really important. Stops you chasing the hot stock, stops you getting fearful and not investing.
Big time.
And just keeps you on track.
Big time. Love it. So 4 steps: get paid, automate, buy a bit of everything, which we spoke about, and then just repeat that process. It is simple as that.
So that's why we think that starting with one of these all-in-one ETFs and just building those muscles. I don't regret how we got started because, if that had been how we got started, the early days of the Equity Mates podcast probably wouldn't have been as interesting.
Absolutely.
But just from a pure what would have held us in good stead point of view, that probably would have been a more sensible way to invest.
Absolutely. No regrets. Keep it real, eat a burrito.
No regrets at all. Yeah, so look, if you're new to investing, if you've been sent this by a mate and you want to get started, we have the Get Started Investing podcast that should help you get underway. But investing is for everyone. That's the message we want to share. That's one of the messages we're going to be sharing throughout this series. And when you make that first investment and you're celebrating, there's only one way to celebrate: by keeping it real and eating a burrito.
That's right.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful. Equity.